The cold metal floor of the auction room echoed under Myra's bare feet. She stood quietly, her heart pounding like a drum in her chest. Around her, strange faces from different planets watched closely. They whispered and pointed at her, like she was something strange or new. But to Myra, she felt only one thing: fear. She was sold. Not because she wanted to be, but because her family was hungry. For many months, the crops had failed, and the small village where Myra lived was dying. Her little brother had a fever that would not go away. Her mother's eyes were tired from worry. And Myra? She was the oldest, the one who could help. When the auction came to her planet, her family made the hardest decision: Myra would go. She swallowed hard, trying to hold back tears. She did not want to be sold. But she had to. It was the only way to save her family. The auctioneer, a tall alien with many arms, raised a strange glowing tool. It flashed, and a loud voice filled the room. Starting bid, 10,000 credits. His eyes scanned the crowd. Bidders raised their hands quickly. Each wanted Myra for their own reason. Some wanted her as a worker, others as a servant. Some just wanted to show power. Myra looked at each of the bidders, wondering what kind of life awaited her. Suddenly, a man stood up. He was different. His clothes were plain, and his face was kind. He did not raise his hand fast like the others. Instead, he waited, calm and steady. When he spoke, his voice was soft but strong. "I will buy her." The room went silent. The auctioneer's eyes narrowed. Why would a human want a woman from a distant planet? Humans are far away. This is unusual. The man smiled faintly. Because she deserves more than just survival. Myra's heart skipped. Could this man mean something different? Could she trust him? The bidding ended quickly after that. The man, whose name was Ben, became the highest bidder. Myra felt a mix of hope and fear as she was led away. She was taken on a large ship, moving fast through the stars. Myra watched the lights of her home world disappear behind her. She thought of her family and prayed they would be safe. Ben did not talk much during the trip. He seemed quiet but careful. When Myra looked at him, she saw no cruelty, only patience. On the third day, the ship landed on a new world, a rough planet far from the bright cities of Earth. It was a place where humans lived simply, facing storms and wild creatures. This was where Ben called home. As Myra stepped off the ship, the wind hit her face. It was cold and sharp, very different from her warm village. The sky was gray with clouds, and tall mountains surrounded the settlement. Ben took her to a small house made of metal and stone. "You don't have to be afraid here," he said. "I will help you." Myra wanted to believe him, but the weight of her past made her silent. She remembered the auction, the faces, the feeling of being just an object. That night, Myra lay awake on a thin mattress. She thought of her family, and of Ben's words. Was this place her future? Or just another kind of prison? The next morning, Ben showed her around the settlement. People worked together growing food, fixing machines, and sharing meals. Myra noticed their smiles and their kindness. A woman named Lena greeted Myra warmly. "You are safe here," Lena said. "We help each other." Myra nodded but did not speak much. She still felt like an outsider. Days passed. Ben asked Myra what she wanted to learn. She hesitated, then said, "How to live here. How to survive." Ben smiled. "That's a good place to start." Together, they went to the fields. Ben taught her how to plant seeds in the rocky soil. Myra's hands were rough and clumsy at first, but she tried hard. One evening, a storm hit the settlement. Wind howled, and rain fell like a river. Myra watched as the people worked to protect their homes and crops. No one gave up. She realized something new. Here, survival was not about fear or selling people. It was about hope and effort. For the first time, Myra felt a small spark inside her heart. Ben stood beside her, calm in the storm. "You will be part of this," he said. "Not because you are sold, but because you are strong." Myra looked at him and nodded. Maybe this was the chance she needed. Not just to survive, but to live. And so, in a world far from where she started, Myra's journey began not as a possession, but as a person with a future. Myra woke early the next morning. The sky outside was still gray, but the sun was trying to shine through the clouds. She stepped outside the small house Ben had given her. The air smelled fresh and cold. It was very different from her village, but she felt a small hope growing inside her. Ben was already outside, fixing a broken tool. When he saw Myra, he smiled. "Good morning," he said kindly. "Ready to start the day?" Myra nodded. She wanted to learn everything she could about this new world. The settlement was small but busy. People moved from place to place, working with quiet determination. Myra watched them carefully. Unlike the harsh and cold auction room she had left behind, this place felt alive and full of purpose. Ben took her to the farm. It was a rocky piece of land where they grew food. "Here, everything is hard," Ben explained. "The soil is tough, the weather is harsh. But we make it work." Myra looked at the dry ground. It did not look like it could grow anything. But Ben smiled and handed her a small bag of seeds. "Try planting these." Myra knelt down, her fingers touching the cold earth. She dug small holes, dropped seeds inside, and covered them carefully. It was slow work, but she felt calm. For the first time in a long while, she felt like she was doing something real. After the farm, Ben took Myra to the workshop. The place was filled with tools and parts of machines. Some people worked on repairing broken machines. Myra was surprised. She had never seen technology like this before. Ben handed her a small wrench. "Try this," he said. Myra was clumsy at first, but Ben was patient. He showed her how to tighten bolts, how to fix small parts. Myra listened carefully and did her best. Over the next days, Myra learned more about the people in the settlement. They came from many different planets. Some had escaped from terrible places. Others came here to find a better life. One of the settlers was a tall man named Ral. He worked in the workshop and was kind to Myra. He told her stories about the stars and planets far beyond her home. Myra liked listening to him. His stories made her feel that the universe was bigger and more exciting than she had ever imagined. At night, Myra often sat outside the house and looked at the stars. She thought about her family, hoping they were safe. She wished she could tell them about this new place. But most of all, she wondered if she could belong here. One evening, Ben invited Myra to join a small group around a fire. The settlers sat together, sharing food and talking quietly. Myra felt nervous but decided to join them. As the firelight danced on their faces, a woman named Lena spoke softly. "When I first came here, I was afraid too," she said. "But this place saved me. We all help each other." Myra looked around. She saw people who had suffered, just like her. But they smiled and laughed, and their eyes held hope. Ben spoke next. "We live by working together. No one is a stranger here." Myra felt her heart warm. Maybe this was not just a place to survive. Maybe this was a home. But life in the settlement was not easy. One morning, a loud alarm rang through the camp. The sky darkened with heavy clouds. The wind began to howl. Ben gathered the settlers. "A storm is coming," he warned. "We must protect the homes and crops." Everyone rushed to work. Myra joined them without hesitation. She helped secure the windows and bring in the tools from outside. The storm arrived with full force. Rain fell like rivers, and the wind screamed like a wild animal. Trees bent and cracked. Myra held onto a post, her heart pounding, but she did not let go. Inside the small house, Ben checked the walls and roof. "It will be okay," he said. "We have done all we can." The storm lasted for hours. Myra listened to the rain and wind, thinking about the life she had left behind. But here, in this storm, she felt something new: strength. When the storm passed, the sky cleared slowly. The settlers came outside to see the damage. Some crops were broken, and a few buildings needed repair. But the settlement stood strong. Raoul smiled and clapped Myra on the back. "You did well," he said. "Storms like this test us. But we survive." Myra smiled back. She knew it was true. She was not the same frightened girl from the auction. She was becoming part of something bigger. Ben looked at the sky. "This world is hard," he said quietly. "But so are we." That night, Myra lay on her mattress and thought about the day. She had learned new skills, met new people, faced a storm, and survived. She was still far from her family. Still far from the life she once knew. But for the first time, Myra believed that she could build a new life here. Not as someone who was sold, but as someone who chose to live. Her journey was just beginning. The days grew longer, and Myra felt the rhythm of the settlement begin to flow around her. Each morning, she woke to the soft hum of people starting their work. The sun cast a pale light through the gray clouds, and the air smelled of fresh earth and metal. Ben continued to teach her new skills. Today, he took her to the water system, a small river running near the settlement that provided fresh water for everyone. The humans had built pipes and machines to bring water to the fields and homes. "This system is important," Ben said. "Without water, nothing can live here." Myra watched as the water flowed through the pipes, then poured into small channels that fed the crops. She saw the care the settlers took to keep everything working. It was a lesson in patience and responsibility. Ben showed her how to clean the filters and check the machines for damage. Myra's hands were steady now. She worked with focus, learning how every small part mattered. Later, Ben took Myra to meet a group of children playing near the settlement's edge. They laughed and ran, chasing each other in the cool air. "This is Maya and Jor," Ben said. "They lost their parents when their ship crashed here. The settlement took them in." Myra watched the children and smiled. Their laughter was clear and pure, even though their lives had been hard. She remembered her own childhood, full of warmth and family. Maya ran over to Myra. "Do you want to play?" she asked. Myra hesitated, then nodded. She joined the game, chasing and laughing. For a moment, she forgot the pain of her past. As the days passed, Myra began to understand the human spirit. It was not just about surviving storms or fixing machines. It was about hope, kindness, and never giving up. One afternoon, Ben brought Myra to a meeting in the settlement's main hall. People gathered to discuss new plans for the colony. Myra listened carefully as Ben spoke about building stronger homes and finding new food sources. "We cannot rely only on what we have now," Ben said. "We must grow and protect ourselves." Myra raised her hand. "How do we know if we can succeed?" she asked quietly. Ben smiled. "Because we have to. Because we choose to." The room was filled with quiet determination. Myra felt a part of something bigger, a community where everyone's voice mattered. But not everything was easy. Myra still struggled with memories of the auction, the fear of being sold, and the feeling of being alone. One evening, Myra sat by the fire with Ben. "Why did you buy me?" she asked. "I was just a price, a thing to be sold." Ben looked into the fire, then back at Myra. "Because I believe no one should be a thing," he said softly. Because everyone deserves a chance. Even those who have lost everything. Myra felt tears in her eyes. For the first time, she heard words that felt true and kind. She wanted to believe him. The next day, Myra helped in the workshop again. Ral was fixing a broken drone, a small flying machine used to watch the land around the settlement. Want to help? Ral asked. Myra nodded eagerly. Ral showed her how to open the drone's cover, check the wires, and replace a damaged motor. Myra worked carefully, her fingers steady and sure. When the drone was fixed, Ral smiled. You are learning fast. You have the spirit we need. Myra felt proud. She wanted to protect this place and the people who had shown her kindness. That night, Myra dreamed of her family. She saw her mother's tired face and her little brother's weak smile. She promised herself she would keep going not just for herself, but for them. Weeks turned into months. Myra grew stronger and more confident. She made friends and found a place where she belonged. One morning, as the sun rose behind the mountains, Myra stood with Ben at the edge of the settlement. The wind was soft, and the sky was clear. We have come far, Ben said. Myra nodded. Yes. But there is still much to do. Ben smiled. Together, we can do it. Myra looked at the wide, open land before them. It was full of challenges, but also full of hope. She took a deep breath. This was her new home. And she was ready to fight for it. The settlement was waking up to another quiet morning. Birds sang softly, and the air was cool but fresh. Myra walked beside Ben along the dusty path that led to the workshop. The sky was clear, but Myra felt a strange unease deep inside her. For weeks, life had been peaceful. The settlers had worked hard, fixing machines, planting crops, and building stronger homes. Myra had found a new strength in herself, learning and growing with each day. But something was not right. Ben stopped suddenly and looked toward the horizon. There's a problem, he said quietly. His eyes were sharp and serious. Myra followed his gaze. In the distance, a small fleet of ships appeared, moving fast through the sky. They were not like the friendly traders or settlers. These ships were dark and menacing. Ben's voice was calm but firm. Those ships belonged to the auction syndicate. Myra's heart dropped. The people who had sold her were coming back. They wanted to take her again. But this time, she was not alone. Ben quickly called a meeting in the main hall. The settlers gathered, their faces filled with worry. We can't let them take anyone from here, Ben said. We must protect our home. Myra looked around. The settlers were scared, but they trusted Ben. They nodded and began to prepare. The settlers worked fast. They repaired walls, set traps, and prepared weapons. Myra helped wherever she could, her hands steady but her mind racing. She thought of the auction room, the faces that had looked at her like she was nothing more than an object. She would never be like that again. When the ships landed, the auction syndicate sent out their mercenaries. They were armed and ready to capture anyone they could find. But Ben and the settlers were ready. The first group of mercenaries moved through the settlement's edge, but they were met with strong resistance. The settlers used their knowledge of the land, traps, and quick teamwork to slow the attackers. Myra stayed close to Ben. She had learned how to defend herself and others. She helped guide the children and older people to safety, showing them secret paths and hiding places. The fight was fierce but careful. No one wanted to cause unnecessary harm, but they needed to protect their home. At one point, Myra saw a mercenary reaching for a child. Without thinking, she ran forward, shouting loudly. The mercenary turned, surprised by her courage. Myra stood her ground, and others came to help push the attackers back. Ben was proud. You are brave, he told her later. That courage will protect us all. The mercenaries realized the settlers would not give up easily. After hours of fighting, they retreated, leaving behind broken machines and empty ships. The settlement was safe for now. But Myra knew this was only the beginning. The auction syndicate would come again. They would try harder. That night, Myra sat with Ben by the fire. The flames danced in their eyes as they talked quietly. "We can't just wait," Myra said. "We must find a way to stop them for good." Ben nodded. "I agree. We need to be stronger, smarter." Myra thought about the people still trapped by the syndicate, sold like objects in dark rooms. She wanted to help them. "We should find others who want freedom," Myra said. "Together, we can fight back." Ben smiled. "You have the heart of a leader." From that day, Myra and Ben began planning. They reached out to nearby settlements, sending messages of hope and help. Slowly, more people joined their cause. Myra felt a new purpose. No longer a victim, she was a protector and a fighter for freedom. The night air was cool, but Myra's heart burned with determination. She looked at the stars and promised herself she would never let anyone be sold again. Her home was safe, and she would keep it that way. The days after the attack were filled with busy activity. The settlers worked hard to repair the damage and strengthen their defenses. Myra moved through the camp with a new sense of purpose. She was no longer just a survivor, she was a fighter. The auction syndicate had left behind more than broken machines. They had left behind fear in the hearts of many. Some settlers whispered about friends and family still trapped, sold to cruel masters on distant planets. Myra could not ignore their pain. One evening, as the sun dipped below the mountains, Myra gathered with Ben and a small group of trusted settlers. Around the fire, she spoke quietly but firmly. "We can't just wait for the syndicate to come back," she said. "We need to find those who are still enslaved. We have to help them." Ben nodded. "It won't be easy. The syndicate hides well, and their reach is far. But we will try." The group made plans. They would send scouts to gather information. They would use the drones Ral helped repair to watch distant planets. And they would prepare to act when the time was right. Myra felt a mixture of fear and hope. She knew the dangers, but she also knew she could not stand by. Days later, a scout returned with news. "We found a group of people," he said breathlessly. "They are prisoners on a mining planet. The conditions are terrible." Myra's heart clenched. She imagined the pain and loneliness those people faced. She thought of her own past, the auction room, and the fear she had felt. "We must go," Myra said. "We must free them." Ben agreed. "We will need a plan. And help." Together, Myra and Ben worked with the settlers to prepare for the mission. They gathered tools, weapons, and supplies. They studied maps and satellite images. Myra trained harder than ever before. She learned how to move quietly, how to communicate without words, and how to stay calm under pressure. The night before the mission, Myra stood outside, looking at the stars. She felt the weight of what was ahead but also a new strength inside her. The next day, the team took off in small ships. The journey was long and tense. Myra stared out the window, thinking of the people they would try to save. When they arrived, the mining planet was harsh and gray. Dark clouds covered the sky, and the ground was rough and cracked. Myra felt a chill run through her. The syndicate's prison was a large compound surrounded by high walls and guards. The team waited until nightfall to move. Myra led the way through a narrow path in the rocks. Her heart pounded, but she stayed focused. They used the drones to find weak points in the walls. Finally, they reached the gates. Myra and the others worked quickly to unlock them. Inside, the prisoners looked tired and scared. But when they saw the rescuers, their eyes filled with hope. Myra spoke gently. You are free now. Come with us. The prisoners followed quietly, some too weak to walk without help. As they escaped, alarms sounded. The syndicate's guards were alerted. Myra and the team ran toward their ships, carrying the prisoners. The chase was fast and dangerous. The guards fired weapons, but Myra and Ben's group worked together, using the rough terrain to their advantage. Finally, they reached the ships and lifted off. The prisoners cheered softly, tears of relief running down their faces. Back at the settlement, the new arrivals were welcomed with open arms. People gave them food, water, and beds. Myra watched as hope returned to their eyes. One woman, tired but smiling, took Myra's hand. "Thank you," she whispered. "You saved my life." Myra felt warmth in her heart. This was why she fought. Days later, the settlers held a meeting. Myra stood before the group, feeling stronger and more certain than ever. "We have a choice," she said. "We can live in fear or we can fight for freedom. Together, we can build a future where no one is sold or owned." The settlers cheered, their voices full of hope and strength. Ben stepped forward. "This is just the beginning. But with courage and unity, we will change the stars." Myra smiled, knowing she was no longer alone. She had found a family, a home, and a cause worth fighting for. Her journey from a sold girl to a leader was far from over. But now, she was ready to face whatever came next. The settlement was alive with new energy. After the rescue mission, hope blossomed in every corner. People worked harder, laughed more, and shared stories of courage and survival. Myra felt the weight of responsibility on her shoulders but also a deep sense of pride. Ben watched Myra closely. "You have changed," he said one morning as they walked together near the fields. "You have become a true leader." Myra smiled shyly. "I just want to help." Ben nodded. "And you do. But leaders must also make difficult choices." Myra knew he was right. Their fight was not over. The auction syndicate was still out there, and many more needed help. But Myra believed that together, they could create a world where no one would be sold or afraid. The settlers began to build stronger homes and new farms. Myra helped organize teams to plant crops that could grow in the rocky soil. She learned about the seasons and how to care for the land. It was hard work, but rewarding. One day, while working in the fields, Myra met a young boy named Xian. He was curious and full of questions. "Why do you fight?" Xian asked. Myra knelt beside him. "Because everyone deserves to be free. Because no one should be treated like an object." Xian nodded seriously. "I want to help too." Myra smiled. "You already do." At night, the settlement gathered around the fire. People shared food, music, and stories. Myra listened to the voices of those who had been freed and those who had fought beside her. Their strength inspired her. One evening, a traveler arrived at the settlement. He was an older man with kind eyes and a small bag. "I heard about your courage," he said. "I want to join you." His name was Horlin. He had once been a trader but left that life to fight against the auction syndicate. He brought news of other groups resisting the syndicate on distant planets. Myra and Ben welcomed him. His stories gave them hope. They were not alone. Together, they planned to build a network of safe places, homes and settlements where people could find freedom. They dreamed of a future where everyone could live without fear. But building this future required more than hope. It needed strength, skill, and trust. Myra worked with Ral in the workshop, learning to build communication devices. These devices would help them send messages quickly across planets. One afternoon, as Myra soldered a small circuit, Ben approached. "There is something you should know," he said quietly. "The syndicate is planning something big." Myra's heart tightened. "What?" Ben looked serious. "They want to destroy our settlement." Myra stood up, her hands clenched. "We can't let that happen." Ben nodded. "We must be ready." The settlers began training every day. They practiced moving quietly, using tools and weapons, and protecting each other. Myra helped organize drills and taught what she had learned. She felt a new kind of strength inside her, not just physical, but a deep courage born from her past and her dreams. One night, Myra stood outside her house, looking at the stars. The sky was clear and full of light. She thought of her family far away and the new family she had found. She whispered softly, "I will protect this home. I will protect everyone." The next morning, the alarm rang through the settlement. Dark ships appeared on the horizon again, this time many more than before. But this time, the settlers were ready. Myra stood beside Ben, Ral, and the others. They watched as the ships landed and the auction syndicate's forces began to move. The battle was fierce and long. The settlers fought with everything they had. Myra led a group to protect the homes, using traps and careful planning. At one point, Myra found herself face to face with one of the syndicate's leaders, a tall man with cold eyes. He tried to take her, but Myra fought back with all her strength. Ben and others arrived just in time. Together, they pushed the attackers back. As the sun rose, the syndicate's forces began to retreat. The settlers had won another battle. Myra looked around at the faces of her friends and family. They were tired but smiling. Their home was safe. Ben put a hand on Myra's shoulder. "You led us well." Myra smiled, feeling a deep pride. "We did it together." The battle was not the end, but it was proof. The auction syndicate was powerful, but the settlers were stronger. Together, they could build a future of freedom and hope. Myra knew the road ahead would be hard. But she was no longer a girl sold for survival. She was a leader with a home, a family, and a cause worth fighting for. And she was ready for whatever came next. The sun rose over the settlement, casting a warm golden light across the land. After the last battle, the air was filled with a quiet hope. The people had fought hard, and their home had survived. But more importantly, something new had grown: trust, courage, and a dream for a better future. Myra stood at the edge of the settlement, looking out at the wide open sky. The stars had not disappeared from her heart, but now they shone brighter. She thought about everything she had been through: the fear, the loneliness, and the pain. But she also thought about the friends she had made, the families she had helped, and the home she had found. Ben joined her quietly. "You have done more than I ever imagined," he said. Myra smiled softly. "We did it together." Ben nodded. "The auction syndicate may return. But now, we are ready." Myra looked at the people gathering below, busy rebuilding and planting new crops. Children laughed as they ran through the fields, their voices full of life. "This place is not just a settlement anymore," Myra said. "It's a family." The news of their victory spread across the nearby systems. More settlements joined their cause, creating a network of safe places where freedom was protected. Messages flew through the communication devices that Ral had helped build, linking distant worlds with hope and strength. One evening, Myra stood before the growing group of settlers. She spoke with a calm confidence. "We have learned that even in the darkest times, kindness can shine. We are not just survivors, we are builders of a new future. Together, we will make sure no one is ever sold or forgotten again." The crowd cheered, their voices full of promise. Days later, Myra received a message from a distant planet. A group of people had escaped the auction syndicate's grasp and were seeking refuge. Myra and Ben prepared a team to welcome them. When the new arrivals landed, their eyes were tired but hopeful. Myra greeted them with open arms. "You are safe here," she said. "This is your home now." Among the newcomers was a young woman named Lyra. She reminded Myra of herself, strong but still carrying the weight of a difficult past. Myra spent time with Lyra, sharing stories and dreams. She encouraged Lyra to find her own path in this new world. "You are not alone anymore," Myra said. "We will face the future together." As the seasons passed, the settlement grew stronger and more peaceful. The land began to bloom with green fields and colorful flowers. Children played freely, and the nights were filled with music and laughter. Myra often thought about her family, her mother, her little brother, and hoped that one day they too could find freedom and peace. One clear night, Myra stood beneath the stars. She whispered a quiet promise. "I will keep fighting for them, for all of us." Ben joined her, his eyes reflecting the stars. "You have become the light in the darkness." Myra smiled, feeling a calm strength. Their journey had been long and difficult, but it was far from over. The auction syndicate remained a threat, but the settlers had shown that even in the face of darkness, hope could grow. Together, they would build a future where no one was sold, where everyone had a home, and where kindness was stronger than fear. The stars above shone down on the settlement like a blessing. A new dawn had arrived. And Myra knew that as long as they stood together, they would never be alone again.